Lost and found by orphan account. Summary. Connie breaks up with Steven. Distraught, Steven looks to Spinel for comfort. Chapter 1. The breakup. It's 4 o'clock in Ocean Town, and what a beautiful afternoon it is. With the temperature staying in even 89 degrees, there's... Flick. Don't cry, Sonny. We finally stopped the evil milkshake crew. We're all finally free. Flick. From the moment the meat hits the grill. Flick. Static. A remote tossed half-heartedly at the TV drops to the floor with a hard thud, letting out a subdued sigh. Steven flops onto his bed, his back landing on a strewn pillow, already beginning to feel the placidity of the day seep into his bones. Sisa. Another day of doing absolutely nothing. No thrills, no surprises, no missions. Everything totally in order, and why wouldn't it be? What with him saving the universe and all. To think of all the missions he'd been on, just waiting to get home and rest. Just like this, relaxed, enveloped in the warm light of the day, enjoying the soft crashing of the tide outside. But today, the stillness of the beach house only feels like a heavy weight on his chest, pushing him deeper into his somber state. Sighing, he turns over to his side, facing the sparingly adorned wall. His phone sits blankly to his left, dark and listless. Still no text from Connie. It's been 3 weeks since he last saw his girlfriend, just days after her high school graduation. She'd invited him to a small bonfire at the beach to celebrate. Just a couple of classmates and old friends, sure. But what a night. They spent hours laughing, dancing, clinking together a few miscellaneous drinks. Don't mention this to Pearl. She winked at him. His face flushes a pale pink as he recalls the way she swayed in the moonlight to the wild beat of the stereo, her figure engulfed in a bright, blazing yellow. She was breathtaking, intelligent, funny, and most importantly of all, his best friend. He had been waiting apprehensively for summer to arrive. No school meant more time to spend together. And oh, how patient he'd been. He scoffed at himself. Heck yeah, I've been patient. After all, it had already been 2 weeks since she last called him. They'd made it a habit before just a small 30-minute phone call after tennis practice. She'd finally been made varsity captain and enjoyed chatting to him about recent meets. Our team's getting better every day, she'd say excitedly. And God, didn't the cheery timbre in her voice make his heart sing and his head fuzzy? But now school was officially over. Tennis season had ended, and her days had been far less scheduled. It's no big deal, he'd assure himself. Her parents are probably all over her right now. I'll just give her some space and things will be back to normal. He'd recalled how emotional her parents had been at graduation, her father almost full-on sobbing during Connie's valedictorian speech. Did I say it right? He'd asked her shyly. They'd already made plans to visit her various uncles and cousins throughout the state, even mentioning a trip abroad. It is all kind of overwhelming for them, Steven. She confided to him. I am technically their first kid to graduate, even if I am an only child. All that he could understand. But now, he couldn't help but feel worried. It had, after all, been a week since he'd last gotten a message from Connie. They hadn't gone that long without texting each other since he was 14, and he'd made the mistake of shutting her out of his life. He was lucky enough to fix that situation and make it out feeling closer than ever to her. But now he couldn't help but wonder, did I do something wrong? He shifts onto his stomach now, hands rising to cup his face, unlocking his phone to yet another blank screen. The time burns a crisp 5:03 p.m. He lets out a small whine at this. Why did he feel like this? They were adults now. He should handle being on his own. At this rate, he'll never survive Connie going off to university. Eyes. She'd told him the minute she'd gotten the letter. I got in, Steven. She'd gushed to him. I knew my application was for early admission, but I didn't know it had come that quickly. That was months ago now. She'd been so happy that day. The vivid memory of her giddy smile and shimmering eyes had burned fiercely into his mind. He hadn't been exactly sure what was so great about college, or education in general. But anything that brought that glint of joy in her glance had to be incredible. The only issue was that she'd be moving across the country. You're leaving? He'd squeaked, shoulders drooping at the news. Her beaming face faltered a second, expression betraying a touch of uncertainty. "Hey, it's okay," she'd comforted him, running her hands soothingly over his own. "It's not like I'll be gone forever. Besides, we can always video chat." He exhaled a breath he didn't recall holding. Everything would be fine, just as long as they had each other. "I'm worrying too much." He groaned. She had to be busy. She would never leave him hanging like this if it wasn't for something important, but she could have at least warned him ahead of time. He glanced outside, the sun already starting to wane towards the west. He'd been moping around long enough, he thought, pushing himself off his comforter. Slipping into his scuffed, rosy sandals, he turned off the buzzing television and headed towards the stairs. "I wonder what Amethyst is up to." Ping! The shrill tone rang out from the corner of his bed. Woomph! He's already pounced onto the blinking smartphone, smashing in his passcode with tense fingers and tearing into the bright words. "Connie. Hey, Steven. I'm sorry I haven't been talking to you much lately. I've had a lot on my mind, and I think we should talk in person. Can you meet me by the lighthouse? I'll be there soon. Read. Today, 5:25 p.m. His heart flutters at this. Connie wants to see him right now. He looks down at himself. All day old clothing and chaps crumbs. Of course, I'll be right there. Read. Today, 5:26 p.m. Taking the time to change into a new outfit and combing a few digits through his hair, he barrels down the stairs into the living room. His stomach gurgles in protest as he takes a quick glimpse at the kitchen. Has he really not eaten today? No time, he reminds himself, body halfway out the door, mind already in his girlfriend's warm embrace. He looks up at the lighthouse sat plainly atop the temple. It's definitely not the highest jump he's made, but it's a feat nonetheless. Taking a running start, he hurls himself forward, sand crunching under his sandals as he launches himself ever higher, wind rustling the thin fabric of his jacket as he zips through the air. Landing gracefully onto the soft grass of the cliffside, he allows himself a moment to catch his breath and admire the view. It was here 2 years ago, where a heartbroken gem landed on her enormous pink fluorescent contraption and threatened his friends and planet. Small and bouncy with a crackling energy, she had swooped down and injected the Earth with an irradiated sludge, sparing no time to incapacitate the long out-of-service crystal gems and devastate his carefully honed powers. But that was 2 years ago. Spinel, as he later found out she was called, has been living in the palace on Homeworld now, with his 3 fellow diamonds, white, blue, and yellow. Everything had clicked so well into place, and he was grateful for the painlessness of it all. More importantly, he was thankful that he was no longer responsible for anyone's personal torment or emotional vulnerabilities. It was just him, his relatively well-adjusted family, and Connie. No drama, and especially no fighting. He's torn away from his thoughts at the sound of light footsteps and rustling. "Connie!" he yells out excitedly, arms extended, waiting to hold her. She approaches him meekly, greeting him with a minor wave, decidedly keeping a short distance from him. He lowers his arms nonchalantly. No big deal, he thinks to himself, ignoring the skip in his heartbeat. "Hi, Steven. I'm glad you came," she began. "I really need to talk to you. There's something important I need to tell you." She's anxious, shifting from side to side, fingers fidgeting together and apart. Steven doesn't ask her about it, waiting apprehensively for her to continue. "Things have been changing so quickly," she proceeds. "I mean, I graduated high school. I turned 18. I'm heading off to college in a few weeks for the summer program." She trails off, gaze stubbornly fixated on the distant ocean. She's stalling. She knows this. Her face grows hot, eyes becoming shiny with tears. "I really like you, and I know this is sudden, and I'm so sorry, but I can't keep dragging this out. I can't. We can't." And she's hiccuping now, choking on her words. He shoots her a concerned look, hands moving to brush her hair behind her ear, wanting to calm her quickening gasps. "Hey, it's okay." Whatever it is, I'm here for you, he murmurs tenderly, cupping her face closer to his own. We'll get through this. And all at once she can't bear to look at him. I'm breaking up with you, she blurts out to him, surprised at her own volume. Steven gapes at her, the words slowly registering in his shock. What do you mean? The words had hit him like a ton of bricks. Time stands still, and his heart isn't beating. He's watching her mouth carefully, trying to understand the noise escaping from her chewed lips, but all he can manage is the booming rumble of the waves below. I mean that it's over between us. I'm sorry, she repeats somberly. Tears flood down her cheeks and she's backing away now, the pain growing too unbearable for her to remain. She turns her back to flee, when a stripe of pink flies out towards her. Steven! Her eyes widen, staring down at the hopeless palm curled around her wrist. He's trembling now, brows furrowed together, struggling to articulate himself. Connie, wait, he begs, eyes frantically searching for an answer. I don't understand. Did I do something wrong? The world is crashing down around him, and there's no piecing it back together. His grip tightens unconsciously, thoughts racing desperately for a solution. He can change this. Everything's fine. They'll talk a bit more and... Steven, please don't make this any harder than it is, she whispers. She tugs away, trying her best to recompose herself. Struggling to contain a whimper, she blinks away tears and retracts her hand from him. She hadn't meant for this to happen like this, but there's no turning back now. Just stay a little longer, please, he asks her, knees finally giving out beneath him. We can talk. Let's just talk. His lips curl into a small, pleading smile, desperately hoping to cut through the tension, to convince her to stay. I have to go, she mumbles, dashing away, turning to look back one last time before disappearing under the hill. Connie, wait! He cries after her, wanting to pursue her but finding his legs glued to the earth. Whatever I did, I'm sorry! Hands dropping to the ground, his eyes bore a hole into the muddy blades beneath him. He staggers to his feet and remains still for a moment. She'll come back. She has to come back. He'll just have to wait. She probably just panicked. Soon enough she'll be knocking at his door, reminding him that everything's all right. He just needs to get home. He stumbles down the edge of the cliffside, landing haphazardly amidst smooth boulders and loose sand. He almost reaches the bottom when he loses his footing and falls straight onto a dune. His arms fly forward to catch himself, feeling the unforgiving terrain scrape against his skin and jeans. He's choking out his pain now, giving into the grief rocking his very core, voice undulating to every swell of his broken heart. Curling inwardly, he turns over and buries his cheek into the warm shore. Time passes, but he barely notices, the only reminder being the slowly encroaching darkness of twilight. Dragging himself onto his feet, he begins to slump towards the beach house, climbing up the small set of stairs and casting himself onto his unkempt bed, his eyes swollen and mouth dry. He closes his eyes and hopes for relief from the emptiness. He doesn't sleep. Nabbed. This is just a big misunderstanding. She'll be back any second now. I just need to be patient. Chapter 2. Full disclosure. I miss you. Days pass, and there's no sign of Connie coming back anytime soon. The hole in Steven's chest tightens as he thumbs through their old messages, finally reaching the barrage of texts set plainly at the bottom. Connie, can you please answer my calls? Just talk to me. I don't know what I did wrong. Can you at least give me a reason? Did you get my voicemail? I really need to speak with you. Sent Tuesday, July 9th. Underscore 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 underscore. Barb came around this morning. I asked her if she'd seen you around, but she said she hasn't. How have you been? Yeah, I ordered this new guitar case a while ago. I got it off the Spirit Morph website. It has Archimecharis on the front. Wanna see? Attachment. 1 photo. Anyways, we should hang out sometime. We can watch the new Sadie Killer in the Suspects video. Sent Wednesday, July 10th. Underscore 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 underscore. Thought I got a call from you earlier. It was just my dad, though. I haven't been helping out at the car wash as much anymore. What have you been up to? Sent yesterday, 1:30 p.m. Okay, well, get back to me soon, I guess. Sent yesterday, 10:56 p.m. Underscore 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 underscore. I miss you so much. Message not sent today, 3:14 a.m. Ray's End. He hasn't left the house in days. He hears Pearl murmur, her soft whisper tinkling from the living room below. Hasn't spoken to us, hasn't been eating properly. She eyed the two gems huddled around her, a concerned frown weighing down her expression. It had started so abruptly. One day they were laughing among the crowds on the boardwalk, and the next, he had refused to acknowledge anything but his phone. She'd been keeping a close eye on him, awaiting him in the kitchen every morning, cringing at the spotting contents of the fruit bowl, the edges of the loaf of bread she had tucked snugly above the fridge, slowly growing white with the onset of mold. She glanced at the plates stacked at the end of his bed, stubbornly searching for evidence of more than a sparse nibble. A cool breeze slipping in from the sliding door she'd insisted on cracking open each morning. Steven's obviously going through something difficult, Garnet asserts. We just need to be patient and supportive. She'd decided to keep a short distance from him, understanding the importance of introspection, but hanging around in solidarity. Amethyst groans at this. There has to be something else we can do to help. No stranger to depressive episodes herself, Amethyst had tried everything she could think of to lift him out of his rut. She'd given him plenty of space to feel it till the out, as she'd like to say, bringing him nests of snacks and cozy blankets she'd dug up from various piles in her room, leaving him to sit with himself. When that didn't work, she'd resorted to distractions, asking him to help her beat a challenging level on Meat Beat Mania and blasting action-packed wrestling matches from the nearby TV stand. After noticing no significant changes to his mood, she'd finally decided to try simply sitting idly by his bed, humming along to soft music ringing from an old tablet she'd dug up months before, somehow hoping that he would succumb to the siren's call of lo-fi jams to study to. Nothing had worked. Well, we don't even know what's bothering him, Pearl retaliates. He listens to their bickering and suddenly feels like a kid again. Frustration gnaws at his core, their voices bouncing off the walls of the beach house and shooting directly into his already pounding head. He's riding on the tailcoats of fury as he swings to the top of the steps, barking out, "Connie broke up with me." Silence. Amethyst lets out a drawn-out, "Oh!" getting promptly cut off by two simultaneous glares. "Oh, Steven, I'm sorry," Pearl laments, approaching the stairwell cautiously, willing him down to talk. "We didn't know." He shoots her a tired look before disappearing back into his room, mattress groaning under his weight. Pearl extends a hand towards the railing, hesitant. She wasn't notoriously good at consoling others, sympathy escaping her and burrowing itself rather deeply into Steven instead. Although she pondered, teeth sinking steadily into her bottom lip, perhaps she could offer experience. "You know, when your mother left," she breathed, gaze drifting to the portrait hanging above them, "I didn't know what to do with myself." The room goes quiet, as it often did when she talked about Rose, but her voice no longer warbles at the thought of her, and she looks on at the pastel image with a bittersweet gleam in her eye. "I felt so lost and confused. It was like the entire galaxy had shut itself off from me." She continued, memories returning as clear as day. "I couldn't imagine a future without her, but now I can't imagine a future without you." Her face flushes a pale cerulean as Amethyst jabs at her. "Get to the point. What I'm trying to say is these things happen, and sometimes," she concludes, "sometimes it's for the best." A beat shifts, but her morale receives no response. She sighs, defeated, and turns to Amethyst, who frowns at her. The short gem is nudged forward. She looks down at the floor, unconfident in her ability to navigate the topic. She had often suffered from harsh feelings of abandonment throughout her life, abandoned by her fellow gems at the kindergarten, and abandoned by her found parental figure, Rose. She understood the pain of feeling left behind and unloved, but never felt this in the field of romance. Look, Steven, I know you're feeling terrible right now, and it seems like things are never going to get better, and she trails off, folding her arms together. That maybe you deserve what's happening to you, and to feel this way. She pauses to breathe, memories of her turmoiled past bubbling to the surface with every spoken word. Pearl gives her a sympathetic look, offering her hand to hold for added strength. Amethyst takes it gratefully. But no, that can't be farther from the truth. We love you and we want to help you get through this. So please let us in. She feels her body tense, hoping against all odds for her words to finally get through to Steven. No response. They turn to Garnet, who dismisses them wordlessly. The front door squeaks as they take their leave, a sigh of relief cutting through the heavy atmosphere. Footsteps creak into the floorboards as a boxy shadow makes its way over to Steven. She perches on the side of the bed, just inches away from his hunched-over body. Saying nothing, she begins to gently thread her fingers through his curly hair. They remain there, motionless, soaking in each other's presence. Steven gives in to her touch, and after a spell, sits up hesitantly, grateful for the company. He opens his mouth to apologize for his outburst, but is met with a drawn-out hush. The taller gem opens her arms to him, and Steven crashes into her embrace. She holds him tightly, hand tracing soothing circles in his back, as the hybrid chokes out a strained sob. He had forgotten how comforting her hugs were. He feels the ball in his chest slowly unravel, and his heaving slows into deep breaths. He looks up at Garnet sheepishly, embarrassed by his attitude. "Garnet, he murmured before being gently cut off by the fusion. "There's no need to apologize. We're your family, and we'll always be here for you," she reminds him, "no matter what. There will be good days and bad days," she continues, moving to leave, "but things will get better with time. You'll see." He watches her curiously, heart feeling lighter. They can't understand, but they're trying. She's halfway down the steps when he hears her voice call back. "I know. Oh, and take a shower. It's starting to get funky in here." He quirked an eyebrow, pulling at his collar and taking a quick whiff, immediately pulling back. All right, maybe she's right about one thing. Waiting for the temple door to close, he struts towards the bathroom, grabbing an armful of clothes from a forgotten basket to sort through later. Click! The door locks with a finality behind him. Stepping out of his clothes, he glances briefly at his reflection. Small patches of unruly hair had begun to sprout from his jawline and cheeks. He rubbed his face dejectedly, a pair of sullen eyes staring back. How long had he been out for? Shaking his head and letting out a defeated sigh, he turns the faucet to hot, letting the thin stream that tumbles out pool into his palm, overflowing and dropping in small puddles to the white tub below. Pulling a knob, the shower springs to life with a distinct hiss, steam fogging the mirror behind him. The warmth is inviting, and his mind clears as he steps into the cascading drizzle, working shampoo into his wet hair, the water growing sudsy beneath him. When he steps out 15 minutes later, he's met with an assortment of shirts and pants he'd gathered and set down on the counter. Sliding into a pair of undergarments, he rifles through wrinkled clothes, pulling out a faded black Mr. Universe sweatshirt and a pair of baggy jeans. He tugs his outfit on and tussles his hair dry with a towel, before fixating on a flash of pink, peeking out from underneath an old Funland t-shirt. He pulls at the pink fabric and fishes out a small collared dress shirt. His heart sinks as he recognizes the gift Connie had given him over 4 years ago, and his burgeoning composure is immediately shattered by a torrent of emotions that crashes over him. Bursting out from the bathroom, he stumbles and falls flat against the wall, sinking down and fighting the tears threatening to trickle down his cheeks. It was all still so hard. Yes, he knew he had to let himself grieve. Yes, He was confident this wouldn't last forever. And yes, he was sure he could trust the gems to support him through it all. But that did nothing to quell the agony swirling in his chest. He needed someone who could relate to him, someone with the experience to pull him from this miserable torment of loneliness, abandonment, and uncertainty, who understood what it was like to be cast aside by the person you loved most, who knew what it felt like to lose yourself in the pain, who he didn't have to worry about venting to. Someone like Spinel. His mind began to race. Would she really be able to relate to how he felt? She was abandoned by Pink Diamond and channeled her grief into rage. She knew what it was like to have your world come crashing down in a matter of seconds. She could help him. A rush of adrenaline kicks his legs into gear, and before he knows it, he's planted onto the warp pad, destination set for homeworld. A bright light engulfs him as he's sent shooting across the galaxy. Underscore 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 underscore. The throne room illuminates in a blinding cyan as Steven steps onto its polished tiles. Yellow Diamond looms above him, jaw dropping at his sight. "Steven!" she stammers, quickly discarding a holotab. "What a surprise!" She enunciates every word in a gleeful tone, a smirk betraying her natural stoicism. "Hey, Yellow. Yeah, it's a surprise for me too." He coughs awkwardly into his fist, having completely blanked out on the diamonds lurking at the other end of the warp. She swiftly informs him of her quick work at remediating her past misdeeds, an eyebrow raising cockily as she awaits his response and approval. He congratulates her, head swerving around in search of magenta pigtails. She clears her throat conspicuously, voice reverberating through the foyer. "Is there something you're looking for?" she prods, squinting at him in suspicion. He sighs. "No point in beating around it. I'm actually here to see Spinel, no offense," he adds. "It's really important." She looks at him in confusion. Then a flash of recognition dawns on her face. "Oh yes, Spinel. You might find her in Pink's room. We gave it to her after all," she answers, turning on her heel. "We must inform the other diamonds of your arrival. It really has been much too long." He's gone when she looks back. Underscore 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 underscore. The palace hadn't changed much since the last time he'd walked down these corridors. Empty, gigantic, pristine, every arch and corner serving a distinct purpose in its immaculate design. He continues down the hall, the distinct clack, clack, clack of flip-flops ricocheting off the walls, only stopping once he finally reached a sizable rose-tinted door. Shyly pushing it open, his eyes quickly skim over the room. It's exactly how they last left it, an almost perfect replica of the beach house 4 years ago. "Hello?" he calls out. "Anybody here?" He's met with the sound of tiny footsteps clambering all around him. Pebbly creatures emerge abruptly from tiny rotating doors, fixed on the walls and floors. "Steven!" They squeal at him excitedly, scaling up his bright trousers and catapulting themselves onto his damp hair. He shoots them a weak smile, endeared by their enthusiasm. "Long time no see, you guys," he greets them, giving an overarching pat as he idly surveys the room. "Have you guys by any chance seen Spinel?" He's met with head shakes and a choir of no's. He sulks at this, the logical part of his brain chastising his impulsivity. Of course she isn't here. It reminds him she's probably off enjoying her time, not waiting on someone to make things better. "At least I can have some privacy," he sighs, absent-mindedly flinging himself onto the knockoff of his childhood sofa. He stares at the distant pink ceiling above him, trying to suppress the memories of the last time he was in this room. No matter how often he made these trips, he never could shake off the uneasiness that came with visiting the gem homeworld, and he always did what he could to leave as soon as possible. He was surprised the room had stayed the same for so long, especially now that Spinel had apparently inherited it. She probably doesn't spend much time in here, he thought to himself. This was never going to work. It'd probably be best to leave. A shrill voice cuts through his thoughts. Well, 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 doth mine eyes deceive me? Could it be Steven Universe? The voice implores. Spinel! He exclaims, already on his feet. He's caught off guard as she ambushes him, her arms stretching towards him and yanking him towards her in a smothering embrace. Whoa, easy, he shouts, feeling the air get knocked out of his lungs. Whoops, sorry. It's just so great to see you. She snickers, retracting herself from him. It had been ages since she'd last seen the half-human monarch. Certainly less than she had waited for his mother, sure. But his visitation had come as a shock. It's good to see you too, he shares sincerely. I hope I wasn't interrupting anything. She waves a hand at him, scoffing. She hasn't been busy in eons. She exaggerates, hoping he doesn't catch the hint of gloominess in her retort. So, to what do I owe the pleasure? She questions, fingers scratching cartoonishly at her head, unaware of the sledgehammer she just drove through his chest. He had found a brief reprieve from his misery in his bid to find Spinel, but it all came flooding back. Worse, he realized he had no idea how to approach Spinel about his situation. What was he supposed to say? Hi, Spinel. The love of my life just dumped me, and I thought you could tell me how to feel better, since you know all about getting tossed aside. She looked at him expectantly, head tilting to the side, and he realized he needed to come up with an excuse. Fast. I just felt lonely is all, he murmurs, avoiding eye contact, hand rubbing at the back of his neck. I could really use a friend. Spinel shoots him a sympathetic look. You were there for me when I needed you most. The least I can do is be here for you. She reassures him, placing a hand gingerly on the shoulder of his long sleeve. Now come on, why don't we go out and stretch our legs? She winks at him, extending a curved boot into the hall for emphasis. I don't know. It's been a while since I've walked around Homeworld, he admits. Well, a lot has definitely changed, she affirms, but I really think you'll like it. Still hesitant, Steven nods, decidedly taking her outstretched hand. Underscore 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 underscore. Bright, colorful buildings towered over them as Spinel led Steven through the narrow streets. Things had certainly changed since the last time he ventured out of the palace. Gone were the days of strict hierarchies and order. Now, there were gems from every facet and colony here, rubies darting out from beneath jaspers, and aquamarines hanging onto the arms of pearls. The duo twisted through crowds, some gems occasionally stopping to greet the hybrid with a curt, "My diamond," others turning to stop and gawk. They toured through the enormous cityscape bustling with gems who had come to enjoy the new era. Spinel spoke of the latest news on Homeworld and happily shared every bit of juicy gossip she had heard, doing her best to keep Steven's attention peaked and spirits high. In spite of his initial doubt, Steven actually found himself enjoying their impromptu excursion, listening closely to Spinel and admiring the unique structures they passed by. Underscore 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 underscore. And so I says to her, "Listen, there's no need to get so sentimental," Spinel quips, leading Steven back into her room in the palace. "You didn't?" Steven wheezes between his signature guffaw. "That's so bad." His laughter echoes off the walls. He takes a seat on the couch and habitually reaches for his phone to check the time. His eyes shoot open as he registers the numbers on the screen. It's 3 a.m. already? He gasps, shoulders tensing in alarm. I should really be getting back. The gems must be worried sick. Spinel deflates at this, a dejected O escaping from her downturned mouth. He pauses, observing her. He can't just leave her like this. You know exactly how that feels, he reminds himself. She needs you. You need her. Why don't you come with me? He suggests, gesturing towards the exit. I could really use the company. Her eyes twinkle at him, and they trek out into the corridor together. They approach the throne room, Steven signaling for her to stay quiet, gesturing to the voices echoing from inside. We need to find a way out without them noticing. He whispers, giving him a thumbs up. She brings a taut finger to her lips and slowly coils her arms around him. He was just here. There's no way he could have left already. Yellow shouts in annoyance. The other diamonds crouch tentatively beside her. Spinel grits her teeth anxiously as she stretches them onto the warp pad at the center of the hall. Her shoe hits the marble with a whiny squeak, and Steven rapidly throws up his arms. The two beam into his house a shrill Steven! Sputtering out from behind them. They arrive in a huff. A bead of sweat drips down his forehead as Steven throws his head back in laughter, Spinel cackling at his side. Did you see the look their faces? Spinel wheezes, flashing a wide grin at her new partner in crime. He nods at her, bringing a sleeve up to swipe across his face. Guess we're fugitives now. He winks at her, another chuckle shaking out his aching stomach. His eyelids droop low, exhausted from the excitement. He grasps Spinel's hand and leads her down to the beach house, pointing out areas she could relax downstairs. She blinks at him quizzically. What are you going to do? She asks, the slouch in her shoulders making her appear small. I have to sleep for a few hours. It's a human thing. He explains, an apologetic lull underlying his reply. You just close your eyes and clear your mind. She seems to accept this answer and returns his offhanded good night, watching as he makes his way back up, leaving her in the quiet darkness of the living room. Underscore 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 underscore. Time slips by, and she's had her eyes shut for what feels like an eternity when she hears soft creaking from above. The sound slinks closer, and she freezes as the couch dips beside her. Spinel? She hears a voice croak out, I can't sleep. Think we can just talk? Of course, she says, inching forward. Anything. Thank you. It mumbles. What are friends for? Chapter 3. All I Want to Do, Part 1. In the garden, everything had always been still, quiet. On Homeworld, everything moved around her rhythmically, like a giant clock that never stopped ticking. Earth was nothing like that. Even now, she could hear the world beat around her. Crickets chirped outside the window and the wind howled through the night carelessly. The earth was breathing. She looked down at Steven, who had come to her moments before. They spent some time talking, reminiscing about their day, discussing the intricacies of sleep. She noticed as he began slumping deeper and deeper into the sofa, before finally slipping into unconsciousness. Over time, he had inched closer to her, before finally making his way over and enveloping her into an embrace. His arms wrapped around her chest, small noises escaping from his slightly agape mouth. She squirmed in his clutch, fighting the urge to thrash, to bounce. Twist move, he murmurs, and her twitching limbs begin to calm. At least she's not alone. Light drips down the walls as dawn breaks, dyeing wispy clouds navy and gold. Issy. She stretches herself thinly, slinking carefully out of his grasp. Steven stirs, turns to his side and curls into the pillows. Spinel sighs in relief, turning around and surveying the dimly lit space. Her eyes wandered to the warp pad, sat in front of a studded door, wondering absent-mindedly where it would take her. Images hang off the walls. She follows them to a flight of stairs, stopping in front of a large portrait. The figure was noble, soft and pink. Her eyes trailed down to the gem embedded in her navel. Steven's gem. It was her. And yet it wasn't. Spinel looks hard at the stranger replicated before her, squinting at her serene expression. It was a quartz that was unmistakable. Massive and strong, with wild, voluminous hair. Her flowing dress was uncharacteristic, of course, but nothing about this gem seemed particularly extraordinary. Perhaps that was the point. She inspects the other pictures, all various pictures of Steven posing with the crystal gems, and a few unfamiliar humans. He looked so happy. They all looked so happy. What was she doing here? Spinel backed away slowly from the portrait, stumbling backwards, having forgotten about the stairs. She lands on her back with a thud and sits up quickly to check on Steven, still asleep. Phew! She rises to her feet and tiptoes towards the warp pad, pausing as she notices a door left slightly ajar. She studies it inquisitively, wondering what could be inside. Her shoes squeak against the floorboards as she approaches the door, pushing it open to reveal a small room of porcelain and cloth. Pink eyes dart around the enclosed space. Picking up a strange small brush and boredly tossing it over her shoulder, she jumps in surprise as her eyes land on a familiar face. She cups her cheek, watching her reflection mirror her every move. She had changed since the last time she was on Earth. Gone were the runny lines of mascara smeared down her face, telltale signs of her inconsolable grief. Her pigtails were less unkempt, no longer frizzy and tangled. This was the form she had chosen when she decided to come to this planet. To destroy him. The mirror scowled at her, eyebrows furrowing the more she remembered what she had done. "What are you doing here?" Underscore 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 crash. "Wait, don't go!" Steven shouted, jolting awake to the sight of his living room. He's curled tightly around something soft and quickly reels back, stammering out a stream of apologies before realizing that Spinel was gone. He shakes his head and stretches his arms out. He must have fallen asleep. A loud bang echoes out once again from the bathroom. Steven flinches, a pink, translucent shield reflexively materializing at his side. Slamming the door open, he's met with Spinel, who managed to tear out the shower rod along with a few drawers from under the sink. "Heya!" She greets him casually. His eyes scan the disheveled bathroom, surprised at how much damage she caused. He shakes his head in disapproval and sighs, looking down at the gem sprawled out on the floor, puppy dog eyes turned up at him in shame. "Hey, don't worry about it," he reassures her, pulling Spinel to her feet. "I kind of expect gems to wreck my bathroom at this point." Affixing the rod and curtain back to the shower, he begins collecting tossed bottles and rearranging them back into their designated drawers. Ping! He freezes, adrenaline coursing through his body. He digs through his back pocket and swiftly unlocks his phone. 2 missed calls and a voicemail. Breath abated, he punches in a PIN code and sighs dejectedly. Spinel slinks up behind him, head resting on his shoulder. Play voicemail on speaker. Voicemail from guitar. Dad on Saturday, July 13th, at 7:24 a.m. Beep. "Hey kiddo." The voicemail begins. "I got a limo here at the wash that could really use some sprucing up. Think you can lend me a hand? Text me back when you can. Love you." His fingers fly across his phone in response. "Hey Dad, got your voicemail. OMW. Sent today, 8:53 a.m. My dad needs me over at his place," Steven says, turning to Spinel, who teeters back. She lets out a disappointed "oh" and looks to the side. "Yeah," he continues, "we have a lot of work ahead of us." He smiles at her and walks out, her hands clasped together in excitement. and she starts towards the exit, glancing back at the shattered mirror. It says Steven stands in the kitchen, mouth feeling dry and gross. He takes note of the lack of fruit and shrugs. The fridge creaks open and he grabs a cup of yogurt and granola, eyeing the cans of apple juice tucked at the back of the fridge before closing it shut. He tucks into the creamy mixture, the flavor kick-starting a hunger he didn't realize was previously there. He digs in achingly, inhaling his breakfast in just a few hearty bites. He chases it with a glass of water and leaves to brush his teeth. Underscore 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 underscore. They meet outside where a one-eyed cat jumps down from her spot on a nearby railing and mews at them. "Sleep well, Steven Jr.?" Steven teases, scritching behind her ear. The cat nuzzles into the palm of his hand and purrs. He gestures Spinel over, guiding her hand to pet the soft creature. So, a tail curls around her arm, the cat clearly enamored by her touch. An insect hops close, and her eyes widen into two jet-black discs. The cat paws at it playfully and bounds after it. The day is warm, and Spinel squints at its brightness. She turns to the ocean, watching the waves lap gently at the shore, the smell of seaweed and salt water tickling her nose. Steven nudges her. It's beautiful, isn't it?" he asks, inhaling the fresh sea breeze. "Yeah, I've seen better," she states, folding her arms over her chest jokingly. Steven pushes her shoulder playfully, and they walk up the hill towards town. "So where are we headed anyway?" Spinel asks. "We're going to my dad's car wash to help him, you guessed it, wash a car." He winks at her. Spinel's not sure what a car is, or why they need to wash it, but she tags behind him anyway. Steven looks up at the clouds pensively. He's been helping his dad run the car wash ever since he turned 16. He'd asked him plenty of times why he'd kept his old business. He certainly didn't need the cash anymore. He'd finally understood why the first time his dad had slipped a crisp $100 bill into his hand after a painless 2-hour shift, thanking him for a job well done. Chris says it's a short walk to It's a Wash, the decrepit elephant sign blinking overhead, fluorescence dimmed by the passage of time. A man watches a pair of seagulls wistfully before noticing their arrival. "Steven!" he shouts, standing up from a beat-up folding chair, greeting his son with a tight squeeze. "Glad you could make it, Stewball," he exclaims. Letting him go, he turns to the short pink gem who doesn't meet his gaze. Steven smiles sheepishly, hand rising to rest on her shoulder. "Dad, you remember Spinel, right?" "Boy, do I." He laughs nervously, scratching at the back of his head. "I'd be pretty hard-pressed to forget." The large human studies her apprehensively, gnawing at his lower lip, long, wavy hair tousled between his fingers. His face is strikingly familiar, and she begins scouring for his sunburnt figure amidst her hazy memories, his terrified expression bursting into view at the sight of the explosion. No wonder he's looking at her like that. Her pigtails deflate at this realization. Why did she think this was a good idea? She should have stayed on Homeworld. Of course no one wants her here, not after everything she's done. Not Steven, not the crystal gems, and certainly not— "It's Greg," he says, extending his hand towards her kindly. "Glad to have you. We could always use another set of hands." She takes it, diamonds sparkling in her eyes. "Things got pretty wild the other night, what with the music video and all. He pauses, gesturing to the limo. "Could really use a little TLC if you know what I mean." The pair look over at the vehicle, windows filmy with fingerprints. Neon green confetti stuck to the hood, red paint smeared across the side doors. They turn to its owner, who shrugs back at them, mumbling something about showbiz. So, anywho, I gotta run to this big meeting with a label today, he explains. But we really need the limo clean and ready to go in a few hours. Think you can help your old man out? All right, Steven agrees. But only 'cause you're my favorite old man. Greg scoffs and gives him a well-deserved noogie in retaliation. His pocket begins to buzz, and he pulls out a gray flip phone. That's my cue, he informs them. The pay's on the counter like always. I'll see you two later. Bye, Dad, Steven calls out as they watch Greg step into his van and pull away. Steven strolls over to the garage and collects some equipment. Nodding Spinel over, they begin hosing the limo down and scrubbing away the filth. Spinel stretches skillfully around the car, swabbing the windshields and shining the rims. Steven marvels at her quick work. He trails behind her, the hose running taut behind him. He's yanked back suddenly, feet scrambling beneath him to maintain balance. The water shoots out wildly from the spout and finally lands on Spinel's hunched body. She shakes the cold droplets off and looks up, glaring at her assailant. Whoops, Steven says. Sorry, I didn't mean to. He's cut off by a pink arm whipping out towards him, snatching the green tube from his hands. Spinel looks around strategically before climbing onto the top of the limousine. Her figure looms over him ominously. Hey! He yells out at him. Did you just shoot water at me? Memories flood back to him, and he can't help but chuckle at her antics. Is she really doing this? Answer me, she demands, voice high and menacing. Maybe, he responds toyingly. She shoots him a pleading look and motions for him to play along, a soft smile on her lips. He sighs and eases his hands into his jean pockets. Yes, he replies, a questioning lilt to his answer. Perfect, she purrs. He gulps involuntarily at her delivery, suddenly feeling the heat of summer seep into his collar. He's torn back to reality by a jet of water hitting him square in the face. Spinel cackling above him. She continues to spray him, chasing him around the lot with the hose, only stopping when he finally summons a protective bubble and gasps out, "Ah, you win!" They towel the lingering moisture off the limousine and finish it off with a thin layer of wax. Steven drags out a dusty vacuum, clearing the front seat of any miscellaneous debris. Do you think you could finish vacuuming the back? He asks, handing her the nozzle. I really want to change out of this, he explains, tugging at his waterlogged shirt. She nods hesitantly, watching as he inches towards the building, a dejected expression weighing down her face. And a sauce. I'll be right back, he assures her. Dad usually keeps spare clothes in the back. I won't be long. Shambling past the door marked employees only, Steven peels off his damp long sleeve, naked skin shivering in protest. He takes note of the envelope sitting plainly at the center of a worn desk in the corner of the room, his name etched sloppily on its blank surface. Tearing it open, he finds 10 $50 bills wedged inside. Oh, all this for less than an hour of work. He shakes his head to himself, folding the cash neatly into his wallet. He rifles through a few drawers before finding a rust-colored shirt, the wordard, scrawled across. Moving to slip it on, he's stopped by the blurry sight of a gray silhouette peeking in from behind plastic shutters. With a careful yank of a cord, the blinds shoot open and unveil his out-of-commission Don Dice Supremo, sitting behind the window outside. All at once he's at its wheel again. Only it's not really him, it's them. And they're shooting down the highway, adrenaline coursing through their veins, as Kevin blows them a kiss. Blood boiling, they grab the handbrake and drift across the winding roads, the smell of burning rubber permeating the air, as their tires brand smoky skid marks into the pavement. His vision blears, recalling that emotionally turbulent race, especially the aftermath. He remembers pulling into the driveway of the wash, an anxious Stevani jumping out of the front seat to inspect the car for damage, relief finally pooling into their exhausted form and pulling them apart. Connie had spent the night assuring her overstrung mother that they were watching the meteor shower. Not a total lie she'd rationed with him. They'd just seen it from 1,000 feet above the city, but her mom didn't need to know that. Stumbling backwards, his hand catches the edge of the desk and transports him back into the office. He closes his watery eyes shut and steadies his breathing, willing his aching chest to relax. A figure stands in the doorway. It hadn't been long, maybe 5, 10 minutes at most. But even then, Spinel had begun to feel her skin crawl under the beating sun. Vacuuming the limo had taken her all of 30 seconds to finish. "I'll just check to make sure he's okay," she'd told herself, slinking into the entrance of the car wash. She looked around the building, taking into account the various soft rags and strange machines, when she heard soft clanging from the back. Peeking through the door, she found Steven hunched over a table, sobbing into his fist. She observed his form. He looked different now, like a poofed gem emerging back into the world. Her eyes trailed up his bicep, where a single star shone from his shoulder. He must have altered himself at some point. A faint blush bloomed across her face, feeling embarrassed to see him so vulnerable. She cleared her throat to break the silence. His head whipped around in surprise. "Everything okay in there?" she asked lightheartedly, hoping to cut the tension. His face flushes, suddenly all too aware of his bareness. He hurriedly pulls on the shirt, thumbing away the tears forming at the corners of his eyes. "Yeah, you finish everything up," he sniffed, shame burning at his cheeks. She nodded at him. He sighed and crossed his arms, unsure of what to say. An idea sprang to mind. Taking out his wallet, he eagerly slides strips of emerald paper into a bewildered Spinel's hand. "That's for helping out today." He grins at her, finger guns up and pointed at her. Slowly, she raises her hands to finger gun him back. He laughs. "On Earth, you can trade these in for stuff you want, like a shirt or a vacuum or a pizza." His stomach cuts him off at this, and she sniggers at him. "Definitely pizza," he says, and motions towards the door. Underscore 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 underscore. "The quickest way to the boardwalk from here is through Little Homeworld," Steven explains, fidgeting with his hands. "It gets rowdy on Saturdays. We can go another way if you want." "What? And miss all the fun?" Spinel says, flashing a toothy grin, shimmying for emphasis. Steven relaxes his shoulders. "Of course she'll be all right. There were plenty of gems on Homeworld after all. She's had practice." They stroll into the bustling community, buildings towering around them. The new town had finally been completed. Gems from all over the galaxy walked freely through its streets, residents and tourists alike. A squadron of rubies whooped in the distance, cheering on a tangoing pearl and nephrite. An Era 1 Peridot handed a spork to a lemon jade fusion, who marveled at the cutlery. "It really is like a little Homeworld," she said in awe. Who would have guessed? Warp pads suddenly flash in unison nearby. Amethysts and jaspers barrel past them. "She's coming!" A tiny carnelian screams, dashing towards another warp. A squat amethyst spins out from behind a building. "I'm gonna get you!" she taunts, rolling directly into Steven. She ricochets back, landing on her behind with an oof. "Aw, shoot. Now I'm definitely gonna lose," she grumbles, looking up at her amused obstacle. Her expression lights up, and she clasps his outstretched hand. "Oh, Steven! Sup, dude?" she pants. "My bad. I didn't know it was you. Like that would have stopped you." He jokes, hands placed knowingly on his hips. "Yeah, you're right," she snorts. "Would have pulled it in reverse too. Gotta make sure you stay down. Rrrr." She snaps back her imaginary transmission for emphasis. Steven rolls his eyes, suppressing his laughter. Amethyst looks at him fondly. He had disappeared the night before without a word. Garnet had to calm down a hysterical Pearl, who insisted on calling on a search. She certainly thought Pearl was overreacting, but couldn't help but feel a tinge of bitterness at the time. It's good to see you walking around. We were worried about... She pauses as a small pink gem pops up from behind Steven. Spinel? Aw, shucks. No need to worry about little old me. I've never been better. Spinel giggles, leaning in closer. Amethyst reels backwards, caught off guard. She looks between the gem and Steven in disbelief. Spinel rests her elbow on Steven's shoulder and grins. I invited Spinel down to Earth. Steven mentions. I thought it'd be nice to hang out for once. Amethyst looks at Spinel uneasily, who winks at her. She shivers. Cool. She trails off, searching for an escape. Well, I should probably get back to the hunt. Got a lot at stake, you know. Steven nods. Right. We'll catch you later then. He steps out of the way, allowing her to tear down the road. Spinelli waves her off. Well, that was awkward, she huffs. Amethyst's just a little rough around the edges, he justified. I'm sure she's glad to see you. His phone buzzes. Amethyst. IOERU hanging out W/Spinel. That girl's totally nuts. Sent just now read. Steven. Amethyst, it's cool. Things are different now. Besides, it's not like she's wrecking anything. I've been with Slasher all day. Sent just now read. Amethyst. Oh yeah, might want to check the bathroom mirror, manish. Looks pretty wrecked to me. Letho bro, you do you. Just be careful, okay? Sent just now read. He sighs and pockets the phone, leading Spinel through the last street of Little Homeworld. Underscore 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 underscore. They arrive to the boardwalk. Seagulls soar above, swooshing down and pecking at discarded cartons of fries. A short human behind a table beckons at Spinele, who approaches intrigued. An array of sandy charms sat in front of her. She prods one carefully, half expecting it to spring to life. Steven moves towards the stand and squints at the boy. What are you doing out here, Onion? He questions. The boy points down at the sign below, for sale, and motions at seashells. Spinel picks one up and turns it around, impressed by its curvature and iridescent surface. This some kinda earth pearl? She asks. It's a conch shell, Steven offers, taking it into his hands delicately. It's usually home to sea snails, but sometimes people collect them for fun. If you blow into it like this, he continues, putting his lips to the tip of the conch, it sounds like a trumpet. She looks at him, then back at the shell in awe. They say that if you listen to the inside of it, you can hear the ocean, he adds on, paying no mind as she takes a deep breath and brings the shell to her mouth. But I'm not sure if it'd work for you. Connie says that... Brr. The conch blares out noisily, startling Steven and passers-by with a deafening blast. Stars twinkle in Spinel's eyes, and she cradles the conch closely. I'm keeping it, she whispers. The young human snaps his fingers at her and gestures once again to the sign. A memory hits her like a train, and a bright light engulfs her gem. Green bills materializing into thin air. The money lands into Onion's unfurled paw, wrinkling in his iron grip. Seashells fly into the air and explode onto the ground as the boy flips the table forward, stuffing the wad into his pants and disappearing in a blur. Steven watches slack-jawed, his ears still ringing loudly, as the boy somersaults into a bush. Spinel stores the conch in the depths of her gem and waves her hand in front of a baffled Steven. He shakes his head and they continue walking along the boardwalk. Let's just try to forget that ever happened. Underscore 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 underscore. 8-bit music rings out from an open shop. Bright, colorful lights illuminate its dark corners. Spinelli stops in front of the building, her brows knitted in confusion. Hang on. Why does this seem so she begins. Familiar? Steven finishes. We came here a long time ago. I'm surprised you still remember it. She draws closer to the entrance, hands folded together, eyes searching between blinking machines before landing on a station at the back. She runs over almost automatically, blinking at the apparatus. "Skee-ball, huh? Why not play around?" Steven suggests, slipping silver coins into the slot. The machine VRs to life. A sleeve of dull spheres roll into view. "You just grab a ball and try to make it into one of the holes up there," he explains. "Here, like this." Steven starts up another game beside her and takes a ball into his hands, hurtling it down the track in one quick motion. It lands perfectly into the center, labeled 100. The machine pings loudly, and a row of tickets shoot out at his feet. He winks at her, a cheeky smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "Don't get too cocky now," she tisks him. "Remember, I was made for this." Tongue poking out in concentration, she bowls the ball onto the stretch, watching as it spins uselessly to the bottom lip, teetering over the edge and falling into the gutter. "Can't win 'em all." Steven shrugs, continuing his streak. Pings of glorious victory ring through the arcade, accentuated by crescendos of "keep it up." Spinel growls and tries again. One by one, the balls roll to their doom, swallowed mercilessly, and shooting back to repeat in an endless cycle of agony and terrible hand-eye coordination. She's bad at this. She bites her lip in frustration, grimacing at the 5 seconds. Announcement. A gem's gotta do what a gem's gotta do. She slings a pink glove towards the center and quickly rolls the remaining balls down the length of her arm. Steven gapes as the machine rings out madly, spewing out rows of tickets in a flurry. "Winner!" a deep voice declares. "Well, wouldn't you know it," she gloats. "I can win 'em all." He laughs and congratulates her on a game well played. Ripping the cord of tickets from the machine, he directs her to a counter in the back. A large man stands in front of them, arms crossed in front of his chest and head hung low. Steven knocks on the corner and startles him awake. Steven Universe. Mr. Smiley yawns. "Now that's a name I haven't heard around these parts in years. Mr. Smiley. I was here like 3 weeks ago," he replies, bemused. "Anyways, don't suppose we could pick something out?" Spinel dumps the mountain of tickets onto the glass surface, proud of their work. The tall man seems surprised by the amount of tickets, but shrugs and runs them through a machine. "You have about 6,240 tickets," he informs them. Mr. Smiley dithers for a moment, pointer finger tapping at his chin. 3 weeks ago, huh? He mulls. "Oh, that's right, you were here with your girlfriend." "Okay, we're gonna look at the prizes now," Steven interrupted, grabbing Spinel by the arm and guiding her to a small corner. "Ooh." They browse through the various toys and trinkets on display. Steven names a few classics, handing her a finger trap and sticky hand to fiddle with. She drums her fingers on her upper arm indecisively before noticing a light focused on a long object behind the tall man. "Oh, what's that?" she asks, arms stretching to point at it. "That," Mr. Smiley answers, swatting her hand away, "is one half of a couple's necklace. It's antique, so it'll run you a pretty penny." Spinel eyed the necklace. It was a simple chain with one piece of a split heart dangling at its end. She'd never seen anything like it. "What's a pretty penny?" she asks him, his smile widening. 25,000 tickets, he responds. "Looks like you're a lot too low." She looks woefully down at the stack of tickets bunched onto the counter, willing the pile to grow bigger. Steven pats her back and reminds her of the alternate prizes. Her eyes widen, and she slowly rips into joyous, maniacal laughter. The 2 men stare at her, frightened by her outburst. Her gem bursts into a ball of light as tickets launch out rapidly, folding onto themselves. "I knew I remembered this place for a reason," she roared excitedly, the trail of tickets finally coming to an end. "How long have you had those for?" Steven cried out, flabbergasted yet undeniably impressed by Spinel's revelation. She giggled at him and took a dramatic bow. The duo turned to the man behind the counter, who already began counting the tickets. "Looks like this brings you up to a whopping total of 14,572 tickets, he concluded, dusting his hands off, which, in case you didn't know, is 10,428 tickets short. Spinel pouts at this. Steven pats her back reassuringly. steering her to another section of prizes. She stares gloomily down at the plastic novelties. He slides over to the man, resting his arm coolly on the countertop. This is kind of her first time hanging out at the arcade, or even Earth for that matter. He discloses, hand sliding into his pocket. Maybe you could just let this slide. Mr. Smiley gives him a vacant smile and shakes his head. No, sorry, Steven. He speaks through gritted teeth. It's company policy. Steven takes a deep breath and exhales, taking out a worn wallet along with a few bills. I'd hate to ask again. He coughs, placing the cash on the table. But do you think you could just let this slide? It's company policy, he reiterates, pointing at a sign above. Tickets only. Steven squints. Huh, guess they put that up for a reason. Spinel trudges towards them. She slaps a neon pink sticky hand onto the counter and sniffles. Mr. Smiley eyes the prize and removes 5 tickets from the bunch. You have 14,567 tickets left, he announces. Steven glances down at Spinel sympathetically. I think we should come back another time. Steven murmurs, Let's go, Spinel. He puts an arm around her shoulder and walks her out, unaware of the hand slithering across the retro carpet, and behind the unaware arcade manager. Underscore 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 underscore. A bell chimes softly as Steven leads Spinel to a table at the boardwalk's best and only pizza joint. Welcome to Fish Stew Pizza, Kiki calls to them from behind the counter. She approaches them with a notepad. Hey, Steven and Steven's friend, how you doing? She asks politely, pushing her pen. Never been better, he answers semi-ironically. How are you, Kiki? She sighs and crosses her arms. Busy, she groans. Ever since Jenny and Gunga left, I've been working twice as many shifts. Turns out rock stars can't deliver pizzas. Anyways, she says, just the usual. Steven shoots her a thumbs up, followed by a, you know it. Kiki laughs and walks back to the kitchen. Spinel picks up a menu, skimming over the words and admiring the pictures. Steven taps it down and offers her a bread roll. She takes it, turning it over to inspect it. No pressure. You don't have to eat if you don't want to, he reassures her. It's kind of like a donut, you remember those, right? She nods her head slowly, taking a tentative bite. He's talking now, casually gesticulating, voice warm and comforting, smile wide and tender, the kind you might see in a photo, the kind that you've seen in a photo. She recoils into her seat, 2 years' worth of self-disgust and remorse finally hitting its threshold. How can he just sit here with her, after everything she's done? Doesn't he remember all of the horrible things she did to his home, to his friends and family? To him? His voice grows distant as she curls into herself, a scowl forming on her face. He quickly takes notice and shoots her a concerned look. Hey, are you feeling all right? He asks. You don't have to finish eating the bread if you don't feel like. Why are you doing this? She cuts him short, fists curling into a ball, banging them down onto the table as she rapidly stands to her feet. He gapes at her, caught off guard by her outburst. Doing what? He falters, looking around and mouthing a sorry to a nearby couple. This, she gestures frantically, rubbing elbows with me, taking me to Earth acting like we're actually friends. Spinel laughs bitterly, eyebrows furrowed and fists raised. We are friends, Steven retorted. Why? She seethes, rising to her feet. Why befriend the gem that would have seen you and your planet destroyed? Spinel huffs, pulling desperately at her pigtails. She barely notices the hands reaching for her own. Steven pries them gently from her hair, holding them as he steadily guides her back into her seat. Tears prick at her eyes as she allows him to placate her, zoning into his words of comfort. They sit in silence, Spinel ashamed and exhausted from the sudden explosion of feelings. Spinel, Steven breathes. What's in the past is in the past. The important thing is that you're taking steps to change for the better. Spinel snivels. Things are different now, you're different now. He reminds her. And for what it's worth, I forgive you. Really? She squeaks, shiny eyes turned up at him. I did a long time ago, he responds matter-of-factly. Besides, if I stayed mad at every gem that tried to kill me, I'd have like 0 friends. She laughs weakly and squeezes his hands. The front bell jingles feet away. A tall, smartly dressed girl with dark hair and dolent eyes steps in. Steven gawks unabashedly at her, eyes the size of dinner plates. Welcome to Fish Stew Pizza, Kiki shouts out. Connie looks up and freezes, hand reflexively shooting up to cover her mouth in surprise. Oh, Chapter 4. All I Want to Do, Part 2. A chair skids backwards with a screech. Steven staggers forward, mind racing, chest pounding. Connie watches him in dismay. Steven, where have you been? He asks dejectedly. I've been trying to get a hold of you for days. He steps closer, causing her to skirt back. Her eyes dart between him and the register, a bead of sweat running down her temple. I can't talk, Steven. I need to pick up this order, she states, shuffling towards the front counter. Then when can you? He begs, trotting alongside her. Tomorrow, Wednesday, in 3 weeks? She exchanges the receipt and opens the pizza box, checking for any mistakes. Connie, I miss you. I love you. He confesses. She winces at this, a hand rising quickly to clamp her mouth shut. She recollects herself and paces towards the exit. Wait! Steven pleads, blocking her path. A reason, I need a reason. Steven, please. She whimpers, face reddening. I'm just not strong enough. I'm sorry. Connie pushes past him, dashing out the door, onto the boardwalk, and out of his life. Steven falls to his knees, shell-shocked. The restaurant is silent. I'll just pack this up, Kiki remarks, backing away. Underscore 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 underscore. Spinel carries the pizza box quietly. Steven walks dejectedly beside her, shoulders drooping downward and gaze focused on the ground in front of them. Neither dared to speak. Seagulls soar above and land onto blinking street lamps. They reach a creaky bench and rest. Steven melts onto the cool wood, elbows situating on his knees, face sinking into his palms. Spinel looks on helplessly. She was made to entertain, not to console. I don't know how much more I can take, he sobs, voice muffled by his hands. I miss her so much, but she refuses to even look at me, and there's nothing I can do about it. Spinelli turns away from him, shifting her gaze to the sky. Twilight had already crept upon them, smatterings of stars gleaming out from behind plum clouds in a mauve haze. I waited 6,000 years for the person I loved, more than anything in the universe, to come back to me, she began, fingers fidgeting at her side, feeling a lump blossoming in her throat. But she never did. She gulps, failing to suppress the flood of emotions from bursting out of her carefully mended seams. I think somewhere deep inside, I knew she had forgotten about me. I just didn't want to accept it. She snivels out, tears flowing down her cheeks freely. I couldn't accept it, because that meant that I had failed at the one thing I was made for. She runs a glove across the top of her gem, phantom pains chipping away at her core. Pausing to recollect herself, she jumps as arms begin to wrap gently around her. The worst part is, she whispers almost inaudibly, willing her words to dissolve into the night. I would do it all again, if it meant I could hold on to the hope that she still loved me. I guess I already am. She giggles, eyes trained to the sky. Her hiccups tear into the fading day. The crashing of waves on solid cliffs echoes in the distance. Her sniffles begin to descend into silence, and her quivering chest steadies. She squeezes Steven back tenderly, grateful for his touch. The air is chilly, but their bodies are warm. Spinel wipes the last of her tears with the back of her hand and pulls away from her counterpart. Heh, she snorts. Aren't we a pair? Sitting around blubbering about our problems like a couple of saps. Guess we got a bad case of the blues. Steven snickers, signing the diamond salute. Spinel chuckles and punches him playfully on the arm. Come on, he says, pulling her to her feet. Let's do something fun. He tugs her along by the hand. A large pizza box lays forgotten on the ground. Underscore 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 underscore. She's turned away from the ocean, hands placed strategically over her eyes, blocking her vision. Sand crunches softly behind her, and she taps her foot impatiently on the shifting particles. And we're done, a voice announces eagerly. You can open your eyes now. Swiveling around, she's presented with a strange scene. In front of her sat a pit of burning logs, beach chairs arranged neatly around it. Small cans of metal lay half buried in the sand. Steven throws his hands up, a tada ringing above the crackling flames. She stares quietly, eyes wide. Laughter bubbles steadily from her core, evolving into a loud roar. She hangs onto her splitting sides, trying to contain herself. Steven shifts awkwardly in front of her, humiliation and insecurity clawing at his chest. Heh, guess this was kind of dumb idea. He trails off, recoiling into himself. No! Spinel responds quickly, still giggling. No, it's just not what I expected. She looks at his sheepish figure. He wrings his hands together and looks at her apprehensively. A galaxy of stars reflect off his glistening eyes. It's really swell, Universe. He brightens at this and takes a seat around the fire. Oh, almost forgot, he gasps, running towards a pile of boulders and returning with an ornate bag. He reaches for a small tab at the top of the accessory, zipping it open in one swift tug. Soft notes twang out as he pulls the instrument into his lap. I don't know, Steven. Don't you think we have enough fuel to keep this fire going? What's the point of burning anything else? She comments half-jokingly. Seriously, though, what you got there? He hums in response. All right, surprise me. She settles, crossing her legs. He arranges his fingers on the frets of the guitar. To us, he says tenderly, clearing his throat. Strumming a series of chords, he begins to hum a short melody, his right hand falling rhythmically against the strings. Recognition flashes in Spinel's eyes. You've got to be kidding me. Someday, somewhere, somehow, he sings, I'll love again. The lyrics stir in her head. I just need to find someone. That's a pretty dated one, don't you think? She comments, shivering at the sound of the guitar. Like my dad always says, an oldie but a goodie. He laughs. Don't tell me you already forgot the words. She blushes at this, wringing her gloves together. Someone who treats me better. He continues, goading her on. Come on, you have to know it. She inhales deeply. Someone who wants me around, she vocalizes. Someday, somewhere, somehow, I'm gonna feel found. They conclude together. Steven strums the final chord and sighs. He opens one of the cans on the ground and takes a sip of it. Spinel inspects her surroundings. The beach was exactly as she remembered it all. Rolling waves, sparkling sand and smooth rocks. Yet, in the darkness, it appeared to be an entirely different place. Figures you'd stay on a planet that never stops friggin' moving, she sneers. What with your whole change complex and all? He stays quiet for a moment, swishing the liquid inside the tin. She opens her mouth to apologize, but he cuts through the silence. I don't always want things to change, he says, hand tightening around the beverage. It happens whether I want it or not, and I'll always be one step behind, he sighs, plucking mindlessly at the strings. Maybe it's selfish, but sometimes I wish I didn't have to always catch up. She looks at him sympathetically and moves to sit next to him. Well, where's the rush? She offers, scooting her chair closer. She extends a hand out to rest on his own, her palm accidentally brushing against his thigh. Money! Kirk! The can crunches in his grip and drops to the ground. A gush of liquid shoots out onto Spinel's stunned face. Oh, I am so sorry. Steven gasps, panicking. Here, let me get that. He takes out a handkerchief and cups her face in his hand, blotting away the droplets. Her eyes flash open, cheeks sticky and rosy. His face flushes at their proximity, eyes darting from her eyes to her lips. Something the matter? Spinel asks, voice coy and sugary. His heart leaps, stomach fluttering in anticipation. His head goes empty, save for one loud thought. Do it. He screws his eyes shut and closes the distance between them. Spinel tenses, eyes blinking rapidly in disbelief before slowly relaxing into the kiss. She remains mostly still, unsure of how to react and scared of spoiling the moment. His lips were smooth and silky. There was a sweetness to him that she hadn't expected, but appreciated nonetheless. Steven dragged his hands from her arms to the small of her back, tugging her towards himself. He absent-mindedly remembered how anxious he'd been the first time he and Connie kissed. There he stood, sweaty fists clenched at his side, and lips puckered so tightly she'd laughed at his scrunched face. They were young, then shy, inexperienced but passionate. Her lips had become familiar, warm and comforting, yet electrifying in a way that left him in a daze just like her. Over the years they had begun to take things further. Innocent pecks drew into tireless smooches, morphing into provocative caressing. They had never gone all the way, but he knew he could never say no to Connie. Thoughts of her invaded his mind as he envisioned himself pressed against her soft lips, aching for her touch. Steven slipped his tongue into Spinel's mouth, prodding hungrily at her soft insides. Humming, his fingers trailed to her thighs, which he quickly began to hook over his own. Threading desperate fingers through her hair. Since when did she have ponytails? He squeezed her unapologetically and without abandon. His mouth moved down to her throat almost mechanically. Her heart's not as loud as usual, raking his teeth over her collarbone and sucking at the tender skin. He remembered how much she loved receiving his attention there. You're perfect, he whispers. Spinel blushes fervently, speechless. Feeling herself beginning to slip off, she shifts herself more onto his lap. He hisses into her chest. Her eyes fly open in surprise as she feels him jab into her form. She breaks away, giving him a puzzled look. Ting! He draws back in needily, whining at the absence of her mouth. Her face blurred slowly into existence, face glowing and dark pupils matching his own. Steven? She asks. What you shape-shifting for? Pink, bewildered eyes search his expression as he feels himself on the verge of cardiac arrest. Spinel! He yelps, feeling the onset of whiplash. His body swings backwards, gravity throwing him into the dirt, all blood drained from his face. Oh no, no, no! This is bad! Oh fuck, this is bad! Oh no, oh no! Are you okay? Spinel asks, standing over him. You look off color. He stumbles shakily onto his feet, pushing away her hands. I'm fine, he stammers, trying to even his rapid breathing. Everything is okay. She shoots him a concerned look, but shrugs her shoulders. He exhales deeply and dusts the sand from his pants. Smoke rises from the burnt coals. His guitar lay nearby, its neck supported by a rock. He pockets his discarded handkerchief and picks up the empty can, beginning to pack everything away. Since Spinel turns to the ocean, the moon bobbing on the surface of the sea. A creature titters by, bumping into her boot. She looks down at it. It carried a much too small shell on its back, its legs clearly straining to move beneath it. She summons a pale conch and places it gingerly on the ground, watching the creature hurriedly clamber towards it. That's everything, Steven announces, stealing her attention away. We should probably be heading back now. She nods and follows along behind him. Sazit underscore 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 underscore. The bathroom door creaks open. Steven steps out, armed in a loose cotton t-shirt and gray sweatpants. Spinel sits patiently in the living room, staring up at the picture frames. He avoids her eyes, noticing a platter of food left on the counter. He takes the plate and places it into the microwave to reheat, glancing back every now and again to the gem sat on the couch. I need to say something. The appliance buzzes, tofu and rice steaming on the rotating dish within. I can't just ignore her. A ding! Rings out. The counter hits 0. Talk to her. Steven grabs the hot plate out of the microwave, digging through a drawer for a fork. He walks over to Spinel, biting his lip. Hey, he says. She looks at him expectantly. Do it. I just wanted to say, he continues, scratching at the back of his head. Her eyes bore into him, drilling into his soul. Good night. She watches him carefully ascend the stairs and clamber into his room, the door closing shut behind him. Underscore 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 underscore. She's alone in the darkness. A figure shuffles over to the couch and falls asleep in her arms. Chapter 5. Dream Come True. Darkness shrouds the beach tonight, the stars barely illuminating the foamy waves creeping past the tide lines and encroaching onto the cool dunes, the moon hiding in obscurity behind distant clouds. Worn tires crunch across the coarse sand. Steven gasps breathlessly, trying desperately to pedal through the harsh terrain. His legs pump uselessly beneath him, straining to maintain an acceptable speed. He grunts as the bike hobbles across the shore. He can't seem to go any faster despite his best efforts. A frustrated groan escapes his lips. Come on! I don't have time for this. He has to make it before... Well, he's not exactly sure. All he knows is that he has somewhere to be, and that he needs to get there as soon as possible. A light flickers in the distance, and he looks away at the sudden brightness. He feels the bike wobble under him as he loses his balance and crashes to the ground. To heck with this, he thinks to himself, before dusting himself off and throwing the bike defeatedly down into the sand. Marching relentlessly towards the light source, the scene in front of him sharpens as he approaches. He draws closer and closer before recognizing the light as a small bonfire, obscured by a figure. Squinting, his heart drops to the bottom of his stomach as he's struck by a sudden realization. It's Connie. His steady gait quickly devolves into a frantic scramble towards the girl standing before the flames. All sense of reason escapes his body as he bounds towards his lost love. Connie! He shouts, finally remembering the reason for his urgency. He waves to her excitedly, coming to a halt in front of her. He takes a closer look at her. Her hair, long and silky, flows in tandem to her dress, billowing in the ocean breeze, following along to the gentle sway of her hips. She twirls around, eyes closed, dancing rhythmically, seemingly keeping to the beat of a non-existent song. A small radio sits in the sand beside her. Upon closer inspection, he realizes the device is on, despite no sound ringing out. He raises his eyebrow, unsure of what to make of the strange sight before him. He quickly shakes his head, resolute in his desire to speak with the girl, refusing to waste this opportunity. Connie, I'm really glad to see you. I have something I need to say to you. So please just hear me out, he pleads. He takes a moment to inhale deeply, mentally preparing himself for the confrontation. I apologize if I did anything that hurt you. It has never been my intention to be anything but supportive. He begins, voice warbling unintentionally, betraying his nerves. It hurts me to think about how suddenly things ended, and I know it's selfish, but I think it would help me a lot if you let me know your thoughts on why this is happening. He releases a breath he didn't realize he was holding, and looks at her expectantly, readying himself for whatever response he might receive. Minutes pass, and Connie continues twirling to inaudible music. It doesn't seem like she even noticed his presence. Steven bites at his bottom lip. Somehow this feels worse than if she had just rejected him again. Why is she ignoring me? His thoughts drift to their last encounter at the pizzeria. Is that what she's upset about? I'm sorry about what happened at the restaurant. I've been acting so brash lately, and I hope you can forgive me. He stutters, reprimanding himself for his less than charming behavior. Things have been really hard since you left. I'm not sure if you can relate. She shuffles across the sand, carelessly, eyes not once opening to look at him. He feels a knot of resentment form in his chest. You know the worst thing about this whole thing isn't that we aren't dating anymore. No, the worst thing is that I lost my best friend. He continues, I thought we would always be there for each other, but apparently I was wrong. Tears begin welling at the corner of his eyes, but he refuses to let them fall. He is so unbelievably sick of crying. Connie obviously doesn't care about this, so why should he? I'm a wreck, you know. He laughs to himself bitterly. No matter what I do, I can't stop thinking about what happened. I can't sleep, eat, or concentrate on anything. I just feel so lost. The ball in his throat is subdued by the anger welling through his form. He feels himself begin to tremble. He brings his hand up to his forehead and drags it into his hair, digging his fingers into his scalp, trying to find any relief for the tension building in his body. Now everyone's worried, and I can't do anything about it, and it's hard, and... He scrambles, trying to find the right string of words to express his exasperation, his gaze rising to shoot daggers at the seemingly oblivious girl in front of him. And you don't even care! He wails, his hands curling into fists. After all we've been through together, don't you think I deserve to know why? All he needs is a response, a word, a nod, a frown, anything. He searches desperately for any semblance of a reaction, anything to make him feel like less of an idiot. He fumes. He knows he's reached the point of no return. There's no point in trying to restrain himself. His jaw tightens and he feels the hot pull of adrenaline coursing through his veins. His internal timer hits 0 and he feels himself explode. Oh, why won't you answer me? He yells, crashing his fist down into the stereo. Connie flings her arm out and grabs a hold of his wrist just before he can damage the device. Steven gasps, shocked at her agility. He flounders, his rage dissipating as quickly as it came on, replaced by utter confusion. What the heck is going on? I'm not strong enough, she responds simply. The radio seems to echo her. He feels a strange wave of emptiness wash over his body as she releases his hand and leans in to cup his cheek, wiping away a tear that managed to escape in the heat of it all. He shuts his eyes, and she presses her lips to his own. He barely even registers her touch as she entangles her fingers through his tousled hair, her other hand absent-mindedly trailing down his shoulder and bicep coyly. She slips her tongue into his parted lips, invading his mouth with the taste of apples. He's caught between a blubber and a moan. Finally, she pulls away from him, chuckling sardonically. His cheeks burn in shame and frustration, eyes flying open to meet her gaze defiantly. A set of magenta eyes blink back at him. Spinel, he screams, sitting upright. His blood runs cold, and he feels as though his heart is going to erupt from his chest. Present? Spinel replies, earnestly raising her hand. He blinks at her, stupefied before breathing a sigh of relief. They're in his living room, the sun spilling through the ample windows and casting his home in a radiant shade of gold. Spinel sits across from him, grinning wildly. He allows himself to relax, falling back into the soft cushions of the couch. It was all just a dream. A chill runs up his spine. A bad one. Steven rolls to his side, glancing over at Spinel, who has redirected her attention to a small device in her hand. He looks closer and realizes it's his smartphone. She notices his gaze and smiles sheepishly. You caught me," she giggles, holding the phone out to him. I noticed it just sitting there, and I thought to myself, hey, he probably wouldn't mind if I tinkered around with this. Well, I would have preferred that you ask first, but you're right. I don't mind, he replies, before cocking his head. Wait, how did you figure out my passcode? I saw you type it in a few times, she responded matter-of-factly, shrugging her shoulders. He hummed at this, feeling simultaneously exposed and weirdly impressed, before reaching out to take his phone. A familiar live stream plays in the background, hosted by the one and only Ronaldo Fryman. The frenzied man seems to have been streaming for some time. Have you been watching this, Spinel? Steven asks, unsure if she should be exposed to the manic side of humanity so soon in her introduction. Yeah, he seems to know a lot about Earth and human society, she confirms. Steven grimaces at the thought of the gem finding any of his conspiratorial ravings educational. Plus, he's got all these cool, wacky stories just now. He was talking about how he got attacked by something big and scary last night on the beach. Steven recoils at this, feeling something jog loose in his memory. Last night on the beach. Oh no, thoughts of last night flood his mind as he breaks into a sweat. That was real, he kissed Spinel. He smacks his hand to his forehead. He did more than just kiss Spinel. He wishes he could sink into the ground. Feelings of guilt and embarrassment overtake his body, and he nearly forgets what they were even talking about when he's pulled from his thoughts by a call from Garnet. His thumb slides to answer the call, hitting the speaker button almost reflexively. Steven, we need you down at the boardwalk immediately. I see a corrupted gem coming that way. Please hurry, she states hastily, before adding, and bring Spinel. Click. The call ends just as suddenly as he received it. Steven turns to Spinel with a determined look. She nods back at him and hurries towards the door. He jumps from his spot on the sofa and grabs his signature jacket, as well as a few protein bars and a water flask. Looks like his internal crisis will have to wait. Or, thank the stars,